Welcome to webinar 9 in the series of 12 webinars where we help you to bring calling and meeting to the next level. My name is Michael Kollewijn, Teams Technical Specialist, Microsoft the Netherlands, and in daily contact with customers and partners about Teams in general and calling and meeting in specific. Today we got a special guest which I will introduce later on. The webinar will take approximately 45 minutes and we got 50 minutes reserved for Q&A. Please ask your questions during the webinar. We got Remco de Kramer available to answer within the chat, and we try to take the questions online in the last 15 minutes. All the slides and the recording will be available after the webinar and will be sent to you tomorrow morning in the mail. This webinar is all about recording within Teams and compliancy recording in specific. Teams is the hub for teamwork within Microsoft 365, but it's also the platform for customer engagement. It's also a platform where software vendors can build up their solutions. One of the examples within the solutions is compliancy recording. We don't provide compliancy recording solutions directly from Microsoft itself. It's our strategy to build the platform for collaboration with partners and let partners enable the possibility of Teams and build their solution on top of that. One of those partners is AudioCode. AudioCode is with us today. Jasper, can you please introduce yourself?
Of course. My name is Jasper Filon. I'm one of the technical pre-sales specialists from AudioCode Benelux. So with our sales team, we do Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, helping our partners to get the most out of their Microsoft UC solution.
Great. Looking at recordings, I think it's good to start with a definition of recording, because there are multiple ways you can record sessions. You got convenience recording, which is actually activated and managed by the user itself. And this is one of the examples we use in Teams meeting or Teams calling, where the user is empowered to record the session, use transcription, use live captations. So this is a user perspective. We got functional recordings, and functional recordings is actually recording as part of the solution. You can think about Teams live event, the event we are using as of today, where we record the session during the presentation, so you can pause, playback, and the recording is available as integrated part of the solution and can be shared with participants, and we can also decide who to share with and what our retention policy is. Compliancy recording, or organizational recording as stated here, is a league of its own. It's probably most used in financials and healthcare, and mainly about legal and compliancy reasons. This is the subject we will dive into today later. And then there's lawful interception. And lawful interception is the silent surveillance mainly provided by providers, and it's also authorized by LIA. So if we look at organizational recording, why do we use organizational recording? Well, I think the main topics are compliancy and regulatory obligations. We need to do it because we have a trading, because we have a data protection agreement, or we need to have legal hold in all the calls that are being held. It can also be used for security and surveillance. Is there a fraud? Is there an incident? Is there a leak of information within your company? Do you have a suspected employee? You can use recordings to investigate further what was the case, what is the damage, and which employee is involved. Another topic why a couple of organizations are using it is for workforce engagement. What is the quality of the calls we do with our customers? What is the reaction of the employee at the customer question? How does he handle customer feedback? So if we want to train and improve the recordings, the calls, call recording is a mechanism to analyze and evaluate the calls. So there are a couple of reasons why an organization could use compliancy recording or organizational recording. How do we do it? Well, mainly compliance recording, organizational recording is dictated by the organization within a policy. What do we record? What don't we record? And how do we capture it? And how do we archive it? I think one of the things most important with compliancy recording is the tooling in the workflow. Because if you have all those recordings available, how do you search for the right recording? How do you classify the right recording? And you want to be able to put it as part of your workflow and get additional insights. So if you look at compliancy recording, I think it's depending on business and segment, but the base guideline is that probably 25% or less of the users needs to be recorded in regulatory organizations. So the most users don't have to need it. It's a small amount of users who need compliancy recording, but it's critical to every aspect of the deployment. We can't move forward without it, and it's critical that it works because otherwise we can't take calls or can't help our customers. Further, it's probably that there will be an existing environment. So it's beyond the limits of Teams. It's not only that we want to record Teams, but we also need to record a unified communication solution, existing PBX system, being from a carrier side of an analog environment. So it's a specific group of users who needs to be recorded, but it's critical for the business demands, and it's not only a team solution, it's broader than that. If you're looking at the organizational constraints, I think it's mandatory from regulatory. You need to be pay attention for security and privacy, and there's always the cost aspect. And you need to find a balance between what we can do, what we must do, and what costs are involved. If you're looking at the migration path to the cloud, I think it's important to say that we need to have a compliance recording solution to move to the cloud, and we want to minimize disruption in existing workflows or existing systems. Okay, before we take a deep dive into compliance recording, first take another look at convenience recording, because what is convenience recording? Well, within Teams meeting, we already have convenience recording as of today. You can record a meeting, you can put in live captations, so you can read during the webinar, or the call, or the meeting, and we got transcription available. This is already available as of today with Teams meetings, and we recently announced at Ignite 2020 that we will be releasing the same functionality for Teams to Teams calls. So two team users calling each other within a platform, and we will extend the call recording solution towards the PSTN callings. So I think it's a very nice way, user enabled. The user can stop the recording, and the recording and the transcription is available for the user. So earlier this week I did a recording, or actually a transcription with Remco. Let's take another look how it looks. Here we see Remco start the recording. I'm informed that the recording is started and the transcription is started, and what you see immediately is that the chat window has popped out, and everything we say to each other at this moment is directly transcribed in the chat window. This means that I can read, if I don't have the availability to listen to the call, I can read to the call, and I can also search the information, copy it, and use it in another section. About compliancy recording, because convenience recording is something managed, started, and recordings are available for the user. But sometimes when you're talking about compliance recording, the recording is not enabled by the user, but it's enabled by the organizational recording. So what do we do? In this picture we got user A calling user B, and if compliance recording is enforced and the policy is active, actually what we do is before we place the call or put through the call to user B, we do a check on the policy. This call, does it needs to be recorded? Depending on user, depending on destination, depending on the policy defined within the organization. If the policy says that this call needs to be recorded, we auto-invite the recorder by a bot. And as soon as the recorder acknowledged, so I know that the recorder is in the call, then I receive the call as user B. So this is the solution available as of today within Microsoft Teams, and the policies are dedicated and managed within Microsoft Teams. This is where the Microsoft solution stops, and the storage solution of the recording solution from the partner in choice come in play. Because this recording solution also has a policy, archives its recordings in a special way, got its own tools and insights, which we're going to dive into later. And I think it's important to say that the partner solution can also provide feedback towards the Office 365 Security and Compliance Center, so you can do your due diligence and use it in e-discovery. How does it look at the customer side or at the user side? Well, within the Teams clients, being desktop, web or mobile, within Teams phones and Teams rooms, we notify the user that it's being recorded. Actually, it's normal if compliance recording is in place. It's most used that users are being notified, and they're used to do it. They know they are being recorded because it's part of the job, part of the process, and probably part of the contract. This is how we do it within the Teams client. But if we get a SIP phone, Skype for Business phone, if people are joining via audio conference, we don't have the availability to inform the customer by a visual, and then we do it by an audio notice. So I think this is a small perspective in how it works, but on the Teams side, and I think it's important to mention that we got our recordings APIs available for our partners to provide enhanced, actually an enhancement on the current APIs, leverage the media SDK, and I think it's important to mention that it's not available as if, but it requires Azure Active Directory permission from your app. Do you want to know more about the recording APIs, or do you want to use samples? These links are available with the slide deck we will use. Looking at our partners, I think it's important to say we have a couple of partners, 10 to 12, already building their solutions on top of the compliance recording possibilities within Teams, using the bot we enabled. I think the recording solutions are available as of today, and we're still in certification process for a couple of our vendors. And one of those vendors who are here with us today is AudioCode. So Jasper, can you tell me a little bit more about the AudioCode solution for recording in Teams?
Thanks, Michael. And yes, I definitely can. Our solution, we call it SmartTap 360. It's our recording solution, and 360 degrees, of course, because we can record everything. But maybe before I'm starting to talk about SmartTap, let's talk about AudioCode for a minute. And maybe not everybody is as familiar with AudioCode as others, because AudioCode, we have always been a little bit of an under-the-hood partner of Microsoft. We take care of a lot of infrastructure, SmartTap being one of them. But actually, AudioCode has existed for over 27 years now. We are an Israeli-based company. We have our HQ in Tel Aviv. And as I said, I'm part of the Benelux team, taking care of this region. One of the cool things about the company, in my opinion, is the fact that we are registered at NASDAQ. So if you want to know how we're doing and how we've done in the past years, you can look us up over there. We published our quarterly results this week, so it's really interesting to look at. We're doing very, very well. I'm not going to go over all the numbers, but we are a worldwide company. We are deployed over 100 countries, and we have a network of over 1,000 business partners that we work with. So enough about AudioCode. Let's talk about SmartTap and specifically what we call 360 enterprise recording. 360, as said, it's because we record everything. And with everything we mean that it doesn't matter what kind of interaction a user is having. So it can be a voice call, it can be an audio call, you can have desktop application sharing. All of that is captured within SmartTap. And again, if the user is using a Teams client on his mobile, on his laptop, or a SIP phone, as Michael talked about, doesn't matter. We integrate directly with the Teams infrastructure and we can record everything. SmartTap actually already developed a fair number of years back when we were still doing Skype for Business with each other. And it's completely built on top of the Microsoft UC ecosystem. So we can record Skype for Business just as well as we can do in Teams. Like Michael said, we are talking about compliance recording, and it's a completely different thing from convenience recording. And there's a number of things we have to keep in mind as a vendor of compliance recording, and I've listed some of them here in the slide. PCI compliance, so we can manually pause or resume a recording. Maybe somebody is doing a payment over the phone, you want to verify his social security number, at that moment we can pause the call, not record the social security number of the end user, and then resume the call afterwards. For MiFID, we have an opt-out capability, so the user gets a notification you're being recorded. What if you don't want it? You can hang up the phone, or there is maybe a different phone number available. GDPR compliance, especially important in Europe, of course. We can set policies. How long is a recording saved? Is the complete recording saved, or only the evaluation part? Can a recording be deleted? Yes, no. And especially within deletion, there's always the interworking between GDPR privacy and law and regulation demanding saving the recording. So there's interesting interactions in that regard. And of course, e-discovery, important part of compliance recording. We have the full audit trail, and I will show you later in the demo. We can see exactly what is done with the recording, who is listening to it, who is making changes. As Michael described, we're not only doing Teams, but we might have to integrate with legacy equipment. One of those can be Skype for Business. I think we can call it legacy by now. Everyone is using Teams. But maybe you still have Skype for Business on-prem. Maybe you have a PBX on-prem, an old Cisco, an old Avaya. Maybe you're integrating with a contact center. The cool thing about SmartUp is that we have many ways of ingesting data. So we can take the feed from Teams, but we can also take it for Skype for Business or from a legacy PBX. So you can connect all those systems to SmartUp, do your migration to Teams over a certain period of time, maybe weeks, maybe months, and then still have all those recordings available in SmartUp. So no need to manage multiple systems over there.
So actually, if you look at, of course, today is all about compliance recording within Teams. But if there's a migration path from an as-if situation to the new situation, and the migration takes a little bit longer, for example, from Skype for Business to Teams, we can use SmartUp 360 as umbrella over the different parts of the solution.
Yeah.
While a recording and the user interface is actually the same experience.
Exactly. Right. So one system to learn, one system to manage, one system to administer. Definitely. Yes. Of course, I'm going to show you what it looks like, and I can do it in a PowerPoint, but that's boring. So what I did is I actually have a demo environment running, which I can access from my laptop, and I think it's more interesting to take a look over there to see what it actually looks like. This is the SmartUp home screen. As soon as you log in, you see which users do I have available, what's the status, and I'll tell you a little bit more about this screen later. But first, let's go to the call screen. And this is, of course, the most interesting part, I think, of SmartUp. This is where you find your recordings. On the left side, we have the search box. We can, of course, search on a certain date, a range of dates. So I usually take a couple weeks that I go back, press the search button, I'll get all my recordings over here. But I can search on many, many factors. I can search on calling party, call party, which of my user is taking care of this recording. We can search based on tags, which I will show you a little bit more on later. And one of the things I always find worth mentioning is what you can see over here. We are now searching our active users, active devices, but we can also search recordings of inactive users. And an inactive user is, for example, a user that left the company. Maybe they got a challenge somewhere else. Maybe they were promoted to a different role where the recording is no longer needed for that user. But of course, if the user is no longer active, we still want to save those recordings for compliance reasons. So we have inactive users available here to see what has happened in the past. I have the list of recordings on the right. Of course, I have an Excel knob on the bottom right where I can export all these calls to Excel, and I can define, do I want all the columns, maybe only a subset of those, and it will give me a nice import into Excel of all those data. And of course, I have all my calls here. I can see who is the agent involved, when was the call started, what is the duration of the call, etc., etc. What you will notice in practice is that you have one or two searches that you use all the time. Maybe all the calls from the past day, or all the calls from a certain agent, or all the calls with a certain tag. What we can do, and it's again one of the buttons in the bottom right, is we can save our search. So we can define over here what do we want to have as search criteria. I can define over here which columns do I want to see in the result. Maybe I'm not interested in the call party, so I can remove this column. And I want to know about the media status, I can add it. And this set of search and display parameters. I can save with the button over here, and that way I can have all my favorite searches available with one mouse click away. You can see them on the bottom left. And of course I prepared one today for this demo. And what you will see here is a set of test calls I made earlier this week specifically for today's webinar. So by clicking the link, I automatically get this set of calls. We see over here the media status. This call, was it recorded successful? Did we capture all the media? No errors there, and of course it's green all the time, except for this call because it was a missed call. I didn't answer this one. I can see the media type. So we can record audio calls, we can record desktop sharing calls, and you can see over here we can also record video sharing, for example.
So for example, if I have an e-health consult with my hospital, or I have a banking consult with my financial, we don't only record the call, because if I think about compliance recording, it's mainly about the phone calls being recorded, but we also record a video session. So not only what's said verbally, but what's the mimic in the face. And we also share, if we show screen, show information, we can record it and play it back later.
Yeah, it's all there, especially if you do a consult over Skype, a consult over Teams. Your physician is showing you maybe a report or anything, everything is recorded in SmartUp. Yeah, very important, very important. We see over here the tags, and tags is a really powerful mechanism we have where we can add tags to a call. Of course, a call can have multiple tags. So I can click over here, and for this call, I can define an account number. So this was customer 12345. I'll submit it, and it's a tag that's added to the call. I can do follow-up, which is a binary value. I can flag this call for follow-up, so setting the link. And now I can always have a search ready where I'm like, okay, give me all the calls I worked on the past week which have the follow-up flag set, because I have to follow up on those ones. We can do validation of the input. So for example, I know that an audio coach account number is always 5 digits. So if I enter 3 digits over here, I'll get an error telling me like, look, that's not a valid account number. I can have a select list. So for example, agent score. We can ask the agent, after your call, rate yourself. How did you think the call went? Went it well? Does it need attention? On a scale of 1 to 5. And we can add the tag like this. And then again, either the agent itself or the supervisor can select all the calls which have a score below 3 and evaluate them. Of course, the most interesting part, we can select the call, and what happens is on the bottom here, we will have a playback window. In this case, I selected the desktop sharing call, so it takes a few seconds longer to load, but it's now loading the audio and the video track. And you can see it appear here, and we can of course play it back. There's no audio because it is a test call where I'm talking to myself.
Interesting conversation.
Very interesting conversation, yes. But if we give it a minute, then you will see that I'm actually starting to share my desktop. And it will appear over here. And what I'm actually doing is I'm demoing SmartUp to myself. So it's kind of Inception, where we have SmartUp within SmartUp, which I thought was a really cool reference. Of course, we can also record a normal audio call. In this case, we will only see the audio track. We have the playback button over here. We also have a playback speed slider. So if you have a longer call and you're like, okay, I know that somewhere in the middle I did something, you can easily play it back up ×2 or ×3 speed, very quickly find the part of the recording you're looking for.
I think everything above 2 times the speed is not very useful, but no. I know the case where you want to know, I know it's in this call, it's somewhere in there.
Somewhere, exactly.
Let's get to the part that's important, and there you can use the accelerator.
You can also play it back at 1/5 speed. I'm not really sure why you would do that, but we can. 2 more controls in the bottom right corner. Email audio. Here I can send the recording as a WAV file to whichever email address I define over here. I can define a subject and a body. Of course, a feature like this, and actually all the features you're seeing here, playback, adding tags, emailing the recording, everything, it's controlled by policies. So the fact that I can show it now in the admin interface doesn't mean it's available to all employees. You can very finely define which user has permissions to do what within the system. And emailing, of course, is something you will probably want to restrict pretty heavily. Another option, and I always like to show this because it's it shows what makes compliance recording. I have a download media button, and what it will do, it will export the media to a file format I'll define, and you can see over here it can be a WAV file, it can be an MP3 file. If it includes desktop sharing, it will probably be an MP4 container. But I have the option here to select digitally sign. Digitally sign is really important. What it will do, it will not only download the media, but it will generate a certificate based on the SSL algorithm, where you can prove that the recording you're using, for example, in court, is the original recording. It has not been tampered with there, and no changes has been made. And you can show, you can prove technology-wise that it's your original recording. It's a really important feature within SmartTap. If you have a lot of contact center agent, it might get difficult to see which call made by which agent at what time. So we actually have a timeline view. It's a pretty nifty feature where you can select your contact center agent, and you will see over the days, over the hours of the day, all the calls that the agent has made, and you can select over here, I want to see this call. And it will actually be selected down here, this specific call.
Because actually this is probably what a user or a customer will say. Eh? I had a call on Monday the 26th.
Yeah.
And you start investigating, so this timeline is easy to scroll directly to that momentum. Yeah. In the hope that the customer says it correctly and don't miss it by a day.
Exactly. And otherwise we can always do a search based on tag, and then hopefully we have the account number of the customer and we can find them that way.
I think search is one of the most important, because you can record everything,
but
it will be a huge amount of recordings, and you want to search for that recording because you want to investigate the customer complaint, because you want to train a new hire, or because you have a complaint on a specific employee, or a suspicion of a specific employee, and you want to analyze the calls or the recordings, let's put it in a broader way, which enables you to actually do your job. And I think the tags are very helpful with that.
Yeah, it's definitely a powerful mechanism.
If you once heard it, you can tag it for later references, and you can search it very easy.
Exactly. Yeah. And of course, as a company, as an administrator, you can define tags that suit your needs. There's a button I will show you later. So yes, search definitely important, but not the only screen that's worth showing. I think audit trail is always an interesting one. So what we can see over here is we can select all our users. I'll take a little bit broader date range. And I can ask the system to exactly tell me, okay, what has been done on the system in the time frame you define. So we can see exactly here what has been done. We can see that the user is created, the user is deleted, that somebody logs in. If I scroll a little bit down, I can see that somebody was playing media, so I can see exactly which calls has been played by which user. And of course, from an audit perspective, it's really important that we have this exact information. What's done with the call, at which time, by which user.
Yeah, who searched for it, who listened to it, who deleted it. Is that also possible?
Deletion it's an interesting topic. If we talk about compliance recording, as I said before, there's this tension between GDPR, which says you have the right to be forgotten, as we call it, and law and regulation, that you have to keep the recordings. There's a number of solutions we have for it. And I think the first one I want to show you are our retention policies. And if I'm not mistaken, let me quickly find them. They are there. Here we have our retention policies. So we can define multiple policies where we define, okay, every user that has this policy attached to the user, we save the recordings for a certain amount of time. It can be indefinitely, it can be a year, it can be a week. And this is typically a place where you differentiate between compliance recording, which you will probably say for a year, 4 years, 7 years, or recording for evaluation purposes. Well, you probably want to keep the call for a week, maybe 2 weeks, and then you delete the call. As you can see here, we can differentiate between what happens at the end of the period. Do we delete the call and the evaluation? Do we only delete the call but we keep the evaluation? It's up to you as an administrator to decide what you want to do. Apart from policies, complete deletion of a recording, it's actually a feature that is disabled by default in SmartTap. So recordings in the system are there till the retention policy says the recording goes. Yeah. But if the customer requests so, we can enable the feature, and then again it's a policy you can assign to users which user can delete recordings and which users can't.
And if it's deleted, it's also tracked in the audit trail.
Of course.
Okay,
Of
but
course.
disabled by default, which is pretty logical because you want to keep the recordings
Exactly. Yeah.
within the retention policy.
Yeah, but if you really want to, we can allow deletion.
Okay.
Alarms, really important from a compliance perspective. We want to know that the application is running, that everything is being recorded. The application monitors itself. If something goes wrong, we generate an alarm. It's being sent to an email address, for example, notifying administrator that there's something wrong. What else do we have to show here? Users. Users, of course, really important because the user is where we tie it all together. We've seen the retention policy, and we also have recording profiles. The recording profile is what defines the way things are recorded. Are we recording everything? Are we only recording audio? Do we record desktop sharing? Yes, no. And we can control here, for example, if a user is allowed to do pause and resume on a recording. I'll show you later what it looks like. But that is a profile we define over here, and then we go to the users, and here it comes all together. So if I take my test user, I can see we have a retention policy. It's now set to default, but I can change it to 14 days, to a year, whatever I've defined. And a recording profile. So do I record everything, or do I record on demand, save on demand?
Yeah, so actually within the Teams environment, within the admin control, we can define the policy. Does this call of which call needs to be recorded? And this is more fine-tuning about how does this actual recording see what do we record,
Yeah.
what don't we record, what possibilities are available for the user.
Exactly. Final button I want to show is the one here on the bottom right, which we call the legal hold button. Legal hold is a special status that an administrator can give to a user, and on legal hold means that all the recordings for the user are frozen. So you can't delete them, you can't change them, even if the retention policy says, okay, it's over X days old. If there's a legal hold on the user, the recording stays there till the legal hold is removed by an administrator. So for example, a customer complaint says, okay, I did not say this during the call. You want to put the user on legal hold till that complaint is dealt with. So you don't have the risk of the retention policy deleting a recording over here. I think that's all I wanted to show over here. No, I promised you to show you tags. So let me quickly find the call tagging option. So here we have the call tagging option, so we can define call tags over here. So you can see, for example, agent score is defined as a custom tag. It's a select box, and you can select either 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And of course, if I want to change this, I can change this to have a score from 1 to 10, for example, if I prefer. We can have on-off, so follow-up. It's either on and off. The call has to be followed up or not. Account number, it's a text value. So those are the tags that you can use in your search and to quickly group your calls.
Okay. This is from an administrative perspective.
Yes.
What are the user possibilities?
I can show you, but I'm going to switch back to the PowerPoint because it's a little bit easy to show dynamic content over there instead of us having to make calls over here. So this is the user status page. This is the one I showed you at the start of the demo. This is where you can see, maybe if you're a supervisor, you can see all your agents. If you're a user, you can only see yourself. But you can see here the status of all your users. So we see over here, we have 2 users, Tanya and Edgar. Tanya is currently on call. She's red, means she's recording. And Edgar is idle, so he's yellow, so he did not have a call for the past few minutes. Another status we have are the purple ones, which are the interesting one, in my opinion. This is where we get save on demand and record on demand. The first user, Tanya, over here, you can see she has a little save icon, meaning that we have save on demand available for Tanya. Save on demand, we also call it malicious call recording. What we do with save on demand is we have like a buffer where we record all the calls of the user. But if nothing is done, then we automatically delete the call after a few minutes. But if something happens during the call, so you can think about a receptionist who receives a complaint from a customer, it escalates and the customer says, I'm stepping into my car, you'll see me in 5 minutes and we will handle this man to man.
I think this is mainly because if you have that kind of calls, and let's hope that you don't have that much at all, but actually when you conclude this is not a happy call, there's a threat, there's a malicious, there is aggression by the phone. At the moment that you think, oh, but this needs to be recorded, it's already set, it's already be done.
Exactly.
So that's important that you can go to save on demand.
Yeah.
That at the end of the call you can say, okay, but this was not a nice call. It was a threat, it was malicious, it was not okay. And you can save that for later reference.
Exactly, yeah. And it's typically for example, receptionist user, where you do not want to save all the calls because 99.9% are totally not interesting.
Let's hope it's 99.9% okay. And it's
exactly.
an exception that you have.
That one exception call, yeah. So that's save on demand. For Anna, the second user, we have record on demand. And this is, for example, very interested if you do sales over the phone. So you're just calling, you have somebody on the line and you're doing your normal introduction, who you are, what your product is. And then at some point the user says, yes, I'm really interested, this is a cool story.
That's the transaction.
Exactly.
That is the part you want to record.
Yeah, and that's the part where you go and press the record on demand button. The recording starts at that exact time. Everything that was said before is not interested, it's not recorded. And then we can define whether we have, for example, a pause and resume option. So again, maybe you want to record everything after a button is pressed, so the user does not have a pause function. But maybe you want to have the option, again, the user is giving personal data, giving his address, giving his date of birth. You want to have the option to pause the recording and not record that specific bit. That's another option we can assign to a user, whether they are allowed to do that or not. So that's record on demand, save on demand. Last thing I want to show you here, it's a little bit of a different view, it's a tiled view. It's the little live button here in the bottom underneath the user. Live means, well, exactly what it says, live listening into a call. So you're a supervisor and there is a contact center agent, you're like, looks like he's having a difficult conversation. You press the button over here and you can listen into the call without the agent or the caller knowing that you're there. So that's what the user sees in the web interface and what options are available to him or her, of course.
Okay. How does the solution work?
I'll show you. Very, very simplified. Microsoft guys can tell this better than I can, but very, very simplified. What does it look like when we have Teams and we want to do calling? We have a user in the top right, he connects to Teams. Assuming he uses direct routing, of course, we have an SBC that connects to the public switch telephony network. And if the user calls, the call hits the SBC and we can take recording from the SBC into SmartTap. This is a widely used setup, and because you involve the SBC, you can also connect your contact center to the SBC, your legacy Cisco environment. Maybe if you have Skype for Business, it's connected via the SBC. So you can take all those sources via this route and ingest it into Teams.
So I think it's a great one because you record directly on the SBC as part of the direct routing solution.
Yeah.
This has given you the ability to connect your Skype for Business environment, legacy Avaya or Cisco systems. In a migration pod you have that umbrella thought, but you only record calls going in and going out to the PSTN.
Exactly.
So you're missing something, I think.
Yeah. What you're missing is this situation where you have a second Teams user and the Teams user are going to call each other. And of course it doesn't hit the SBC, so if you only record on the SBC, you're not recording this interaction. We solved this with a bot. You already spoiled the surprise.
Sorry,
we like to
sorry
say.
for that.
That's totally okay. So what we have here is, well, half a year ago this was a typical situation with users in the main office, users in the branch office, and users at home. Nowadays we're all at home. But we have all the users, and all the users are connected to the Teams infrastructure running in Azure. And we have a bot. It's a specially designed piece of software. It's developed together, of course, with help from Microsoft to integrate with the Teams infrastructure and connect it to the SmartTap solution. And this is what we call SmartTap 360 for Microsoft Teams. It's a little bit different. Once again, it's the steps that you described during the introduction. So the user connects to Teams using his normal Teams device. On his PC, on his laptop, maybe a mobile device, maybe an IP phone. And it's the IT administrator who defines the policies, who defines which call is recorded and which isn't. And then once a call is being set up, Teams will invite the recording, will invite the bot. And what we can do in the policy, we can also define what happens if the recorder is not available. Should never happen, of course, but if for some reason it isn't there, it's being upgraded, it's down for maintenance, maybe storage is full, I think we can actually define, if I recall correctly, what happens.
Yeah, we can define in the policy setup within the Teams admin center, or via PowerShell actually. We can define what we need to do if the recorder is not available. So it's part of the policy, and you can make a decision. Can the call continue if the recorder is not available, or do I block the call, if actually don't set up the call if there's no recorder available. So it's a check in the policy if the call needs to be recorded, and in that situation that the recorder is not available, I can make a policy-based decision. Do I proceed with the call, or do I block the call for further reference?
So, for example, if you're recording for evaluation purposes, you probably want to keep the call even if the recorder is not available.
I want to help that customer. Evaluation is less important, but if it's transactional, I think I want to have that recording, and I don't want to allow to proceed with the call if the recorder is not available.
Yeah. So that's something that's configured on the team side, and then the bot the bot joins the call. It's kind of a conference taking place in the Teams infrastructure where the bot is actually part of the conversation, and the bot will actively liaison between teams on the one side, SmartUp on the other side. It will handle the recording, but it will also do the status information, for example. So we know that the user is being recorded because the bot tells us so. What's important to know here is that the bot is actually separate from the SmartUp solution itself. So it's two distinct pieces of software, and the bot always has to run in the Azure infrastructure. It needs to be as close to the Teams infrastructure as possible. No network element, or as few network elements as in between, no chance of network outage or maybe not enough bandwidth. They're always close together, and they're always there to work together to record the call. Security-wise, of course, important in compliance. And what we do, you see, we have quite a lot of elements. We have Teams, and we have the bot joining, and we have the SmartUp application. And we're doing encryption security on every layer. So the bot joins the Teams call. Of course, it's HTTPS encrypted for signaling. Audio is encrypted. If the bot talks to SmartUp, it's again encrypted. If we store the recording on disk, it's encrypted actually double. So we have disk encryption, we have application level encryption. And all of this is partly governed by the security recommendations from Microsoft. So we have a set of security recommendations for hosting anything in Azure. And of course, we follow that. We have our own security recommendations. We have our application tested. External pen testing is done on a regular basis. And of course, we have something simple as having an application firewall in front of it to make sure that there's no unauthorized access. So security is very, very important, and we put a lot of thought into that. What can we record? It makes sense that we have this list, but there are some interesting ones in there, I think. PSTN inbound, outbound, of course, are the obvious one. Internal calls, so one user calling another. Conferences, meeting, everything is recorded. The bottom one, integration with a legacy environment. Cisco Skype for Business, we can record it. But tucked in between is maybe the most interesting one, and it's Teams calls with federated users.
I think that's one of the most important ones. Because if you're looking at SBC or SIPREC, as you stated earlier, you're missing out also on that. And it's not only internal, but federated calls are external with another partner or user organization using Teams or Skype for Business. And if you don't recall that, you're missing a part.
Yeah.
So I think federated user, federated contacts are mainly used from the Skype for Business timepark, now also within the Teams era. And I think recording also that piece of communication, which isn't internal, but it's actually external, is an important one. So it's good to have that one on board.
It's the external call that's not hitting the SBC. So
yeah, it's the external call not going via PSTN. So that's the external call that will you miss out on otherwise.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting one, and we record that. What can we record on those kinds of calls? Audio, anything. Audio is recorded. That's what SmartUp is built for. But content sharing is in there as well. So desktop sharing, application sharing, we can record. And this list, by the way, is specifically for Teams. What are we supporting Teams currently? Recording controls, always record on demand, save on demand, pause and resume. They're all available. They're currently all available through the Smart Up Web interface. So the user has to use the Smart Up Web interface to start the recording, to save the recording. And we can do hybrid deployments. Talk a little bit about that later. If I tell you what we can do, there's always the question, what can't we do?
I already saw it currently supported, so I think there must be some catch in that.
There's a little catch, yeah. Some of you might have noticed video support and instant messaging support. It's not there yet. We're working on it very hard together with Microsoft, our R&D, your R&D. It's coming, it's going to be there this quarter. So yeah, quarter is already, first month is already done, so we're
I think it's good to say, because I also see the Microsoft certification on there, and actually if you look at the docs page, it will state something like we're currently in the process of certifying our partners. And actually if we look, we have a little bit of layback, so we're running the certification to put the stamp on the solution. That is what certification is waiting for. But I think it's good to state that AudioCodes and Microsoft are working closely together to develop this solution. It's available, we can actually use it today.
We can use it, we can deploy it, you saw the demo environment.
But we're waiting on the stamp to say approved and certified. Yep. That's one thing. And I think it's important that those 4 topics are on the roadmap and are still good to go for the 4th quarter of this year, this calendar year. What I'm interested in is that save on demand and record on demand controls will be available in Teams somewhere next year. Yeah. And I think that's one is an important one, because we already stated the importance of save on demand or record on demand, and you want to give the control to the user to, okay, this is a malicious call, I want to keep it, I want to record it, or hey, now we're going to the transaction part of the conversation. This part I want to control, I want to put on pause. That functionality is available as of today. Within the AudioCodes interface. And I think it's a nice one to put those controls into the Teams interface.
Definitely.
So the user has not a lot of interfaces he needs to switch to, but he can keep control within one and the same interface. So I think that's a nice one who's coming up.
Yeah, I totally agree. We have to have it all in the Teams interface for user-friendly. So it's coming, it's going to be there. Deployment models.
Where does it stand?
Well, yeah, I will tell you. Before defining what a hybrid setup is, let me talk about the most easy one first. And it's everything in the customer Azure. So we have the customer tenant, then we connect the bot to the customer tenant, we have the Smart Up application, and we have the storage blob. All there nicely grouped together in the customer tenant. This is the basic setup that I think is the easiest to deploy, the easiest to understand. Hybrid setups, really important, because we're talking about privacy sensitive data. Not everybody wants to have it stored in the cloud. So what we can do is we can actually put the application and the storage within the customer data center. Maybe he has some rack space somewhere, maybe he's running VMware. We can do it over there. But the bot, of course, always will be in Azure.
Yeah, because earlier on we had a question about where are the recordings stored. Yeah. So actually the bot is always running in Azure to keep it close to the Teams backend environment, so the bot will be always in Azure. But the recordings I can choose. I can record it in Azure, in the customer Azure environment, but I can also put it on the customer side, data center, main location. So I got availability to where do I put the recordings and where do I keep the recordings.
And of course we're also supporting multiple storage locations. So I can define within my Smart App, okay, this is a German user, store them in a German location.
Yeah, especially for German users.
Germany is, they're keen on their privacy. Active-active setup. We talked about rejecting a call if the recorder cannot join. We can do active-active, of course. We can have 2 recorders. They're both invited to the call, and as long as at least one of them is there, the call can continue. So you minimize the risk of missing a call. It makes it easier to do maintenance on the system, for example. So we can do this. If we can do multiple recorders for a single tenant, then we can also of course do multiple tenants for a single recorder. It also sounds a little bit weird, like, okay, why do I want to have multiple tenants? But think about mergers and acquisitions.
Yeah, I think depending on the customer business, mergers and acquisitions are one of those examples, and sometimes the business of that specific customer enforce that there is a separate tenant for that separate operational company or a specific country or a specific region. So sometimes In Microsoft, we deal with customers that have multiple tenants, and yeah, we're looking in how to aggregate that and consolidate that. But we have a lot of customers who are using via mergers or acquisitions or via the business needs for their customers, multiple tenants. So this seems a little bit off topic. Why do I use multiple tenants in one recording solution or multiple recording solutions? But I think it's a scenario we commonly come against here at Microsoft.
More common than people.
It's more common than we think in the first thought.
Definitely. So I have one last setup I want to describe, and that's running everything in Audio Coach Azure. If we do that, we don't longer call it just recording, but we call it recording as a service. So why, as a business, not consume recording the same way you consume Teams, for example? With Teams, everything is run by Microsoft. It's in the cloud. You don't have to worry about it. You pay per user per month, and you can focus yourself completely on your core business. And we can do the same thing with SmartUp. So we put SmartUp in the Audio Coach cloud. We monitor the application. We do upgrades if required. We do capacity management. And from a business perspective, you just consume it on a per user per month basis. You get a little bit of storage. If you need more, we can add a little bit of storage. And it gives you the full flexibility to focus on what you want to do. And we can actually also do recording as a service in a hybrid setup. So even with recording as a service, we can still store the recordings within the company environment and still have Audio Coach do the management. So I think this is a really interesting option we have available via the Microsoft partners, I think.
Yeah, I think this is a very important one, because if you're not having an install base or need to record on premise, or you just need recording as a service, as it already states, and I think it's an important one you can upgrade and downsize if your business grows or goes down. And I think it's an important one. And actually, looking at the Microsoft partners, I think that is one of the next step. If you're having the need for compliance recording and want to migrate from a PBX to Teams or from a Skype for Business environment, and you have that need for compliance recording, reach out to your Microsoft partner. I think it is a specific topic, so you need to have a partner who is got a knowledge around it and can help you with that. A lot of our partners, Microsoft partners, are using the Audio Coach recording solution. So reach out to your Microsoft partner, your specialized Microsoft partner, or Microsoft. If you aren't able to find a partner who is have had the right knowledge on board to help you with that, reach out to Microsoft and we can help you. I think it's also, if you're new in the playing field of compliance recording, start small, grow big. So start with a proof of concept, a pilot, to have a good understanding from the end-to-end possibilities and make the right decisions before starting a project. And I think if you're really new to calling and meetings within Microsoft, you can also do a calling or meeting workshop with one of our partners to start that journey for Skype to Teams, for PBX to Teams, the journey calling and meetings with Microsoft Teams. If you got any special questions, please reach out to us with cmdw@microsoft.com. The recordings or more information about all the 12 sessions is available at aka.ms/cmen. And I want to point out 2 sessions that are still going, and that is the 5th of November, all around advanced reporting and analytics. And the 6th of November is all around attendance consoles for the reception within the Teams environment, a hot topic these days. If you're registered for this webinar, you will find a mail tomorrow in your mailbox with a link to the slides and recordings. If you're not able of joining at the last moment, the recordings are also available at aka.ms/cmrec. So I want to thank you for your participation in this webinar. Jasper, thanks for your part of this presentation. I think it was very helpful, and I got a good perspective in the complete solution, where a part is by Microsoft and a part is with one of our partners, Audio Coach. So we bring a complete solution for compliance recording, and I want to thank you for your attention.
Thanks for inviting.